With Castorice on her way to Honkai Star Rail, it makes sense that I dropped my Marvel Rivals addiction to make another guide video. There aren't many things in Honkai Star Rail that has impressed me besides Kafka and whatever the this is. Castorice represents two things I love, Monster Reborn and Blue Eyes White Dragon. Castorice essentially Exodia obliterates your enemies out of existence, and today I'll be going over everything you need to know about Castorice, such as her abilities, how to build her, like code options, eidolon recommendations, and finally her best team comps. Also make sure to subscribe. Do you guys remember when Sealer was meta? Yeah, me neither. Castorice is essentially Sealer Pro Max, and if you're the average Honkai Star Rail player, you've probably decided that you're pulling for this character anyway. Aside from power creeping every single animation in the game, Castorice also provides a unique buff just for existing in your team. When an ally receives a killing blow in battle, they enter the Moon Cocoon state. The Moon Cocoon state basically allows you to become temporarily. In that time frame, you should heal or shield your allies until the Moon Cocoon state is removed, otherwise they die. Any other ally defeated in the same action also receives the Moon Cocoon state also, but obviously make sure to heal your teammates, otherwise they die. At first, I didn't get why Hoyo added a revive mechanic to Castorice until I realized she's the problem. Castorice's A2 trace makes it so that after allies receive healing, 100% of the healing received is converted into new blood, which I'll be explaining shortly. If Netherwing is active on the field, any healing received is instead sacrificed to Netherwing's HP. Essentially, your characters are sacrifices for the dragon. Okay, so when I read this initially, I lost brain cells, but I'll break it down for you so you don't have to experience it too. New Blood is basically a point system for Castorice, generating her ultimate based on all characters' levels on the field. The initial cost for New Blood would be 100, times that for how many characters that are on the field and their max level. So 100 times 80 times 4. Altogether, the points you need to cast Castorice's ultimate is 32,000. These points can easily be obtained by losing HP or overhealing. Now, when allies happen to lose HP, Castorice and Netherwing's damage is increased by 20%, which can stack up to 3 times and last for 3 turns. However, New Blood won't be generated while Netherwing is on the field, and lost HP by allies is instead sacrificed as HP for Netherwing. Anything for the Blue Eyes White Dragon. With Castorice's ultimate, she summons Netherwing onto the field and advances its action by 100%. You also get a garden that reduces all type res pen by 20%, and if the stacking damage boost from Castorice's talent is active, the effect also gets extended to Netherwing. To put it into perspective, you get a 60% damage boost plus all type res pen. Now if you ask me, that's pretty disgusting. Netherwing spawns with the initial speed of 165 and max HP equal to 100% of the maximum New Blood. Also, the dragon gets to act for 3 turns or when its HP reaches 0. It and the garden disappears amongst the sea of butterflies once its time expires. Now, there isn't anything special to mention about Castorice's skills besides it dealing AoE damage and consuming 30% of all allies' HP, which just contributes to recharging her ultimate. However, when Netherwing is active on the field, this skill will go on to become an enhanced skill that regenerates HP for Netherwing instead. Now, the skill for the Memo Sprite is the important part. Netherwing's first skill consumes 25% of its own HP to deal damage to enemies. In one attack, this skill can be rinsed a certain amount of times, with the damage multiplier increasing from 28% up to 34%. When its health is 25% or lower, this ability will reduce Netherwing's HP by 1 instead and triggers this ability. Yeah, I'm not even gonna say much about this ability, but we'll call this skill 2. Besides dealing insane amounts of damage to enemies and restoring HP for allies, this can be tied to an A6 trace. Each time Netherwing uses skill 2, the damage dealt increases by 30%. This effect can stack up to 6 times and lasts until the end of the turn. To put it into perspective, you get a 180 damage increase. Now in Razor language, more damage, me kill. When casting Castorice's technique before battle, you enter the Netherville state. That lasts for 20 seconds, and now the enemies are intimidated by you. While in the Netherville state, all enemies that are attacked within the field's radius will enter them into combat and serve as sacrificial lambs for the dragon that spawns at the start of battle. You'll know it's there because you get this cool animation. After entering battle, all allies gets 40% of their HP consumed and advances Netherwing's action by 100%. Lastly, for Castorice's A4 trace, her speed is increased by 40% while she has 50% or more HP. So you'll definitely want her to be healthy 100% of the time to maintain this buff, just like how I'm maintaining my DOT team for its next character buff. The stats you receive from leveling up Castorice's minor traces include a hefty 80% crit rate increase, 40% quantum damage boost, and finally a 30% crit damage boost. Finally, for once, I'm not going to recommend Scholar Lost in Erudition, but it's a good two-piece choice, so I'm going to recommend it anyway. Power of Morning Collapse is going to be your best go-to choice for Castorice's Relics. The two-piece effect increases the wearer's quantum damage by 10%, which is what you want on Castorice. The four-piece effect, on the other hand, decreases the wearer's speed by 8%. However, less speed is actually a good thing, since if the wearer's speed is less than 110 or 95, then their crit rate is increased by 20% up to 32%. This includes the member sprite as well, which is cool. For your two-piece sets, you can go for Scholar Lost in Erudition and Power of Morning Collapse or Genius of Brilliant Stars. Obviously, I'm going to recommend farming for Power of Morning Collapse because I'm a caveman that likes dealing more damage to my enemies. If you aren't farming Bone Collection, you're griefing. Besides Castorice, Mighty also benefits from this set if you intend to include him in your team as well. Bone Collection increases the wearer's HP by 12%, so their HP isn't heavily rinsed by their HP consumption, and they also get their crit damage increased by 28% if their max HP is 5000 or higher, which you should already have on both characters. Netherwing also benefits from this buff too because it's a member sprite. This is her best and only set that I recommend. Farm this set or else I'm cursing you with Bailu. Here are the stats I suggest you aim for. I'll be leaving this up for a few seconds, so do whatever you want with this info. For eidolon recommendations, it's a no-brainer. Castorice's E1 is going to be the better choice over her E2. If Castorice's max HP is higher than the enemy targets, the damage dealt by Castorice and Netherwing's attacks is increased by 120% up to 140% of the original damage. Her E2, on the other hand, isn't anything game-changing, therefore I would recommend pulling for it. The ult charge may be nice, but the Castorice action advance can kind of mess up your cycle, and getting 2 free breath attacks only when you summon Netherwing isn't as useful as Dill's E2. For the whales out there considering pulling for Castorice's E6, her E6 does seem underwhelming compared to E6 units from 3.x and 2.x because her E6 seems to only take effect when her dragon explodes. The 20% res pen does seem useful, but you can easily get access to that from support characters like Tribi, so to pull for a E6 that only takes place when the dragon explodes is a bit troll in my opinion. For your light cone options, I'm not going to say much because she doesn't have that many options to pick from. Her signature light cone is obviously going to be her best in slot. The light cone offers a 30% increase in max HP, which is useful since Castorice wants a lot of HP to stay healthy in battle. Castorice also gains a unique effect when they or their member sprite loses HP during their own turn. This would enable both of them to ignore 30% of the enemy's defense when they deal damage and last for 2 turns. Castorice also gets her action advance by 12% when her member sprite disappears. This effect can only trigger once and resets every time she casts her ultimate. If you happen to be harboring Sweat Now Cry Less at S5, which you can get from the Battle Pass shop, equip it. It's a good option too. The light cone at S5 gives you 20% crit rate, and we love crit rate. If Castorice's member sprite is on the field, her damage along with her member sprite increases the damage they deal by 36%. But if you have this light cone at S1, you're probably just better off using other options, such as a Victory in a Blink. This is a 4-star light cone that increases the wearer's crit damage by 24% at S5. The other ability is kind of useless since Netherwing can't apply anything onto its allies. Your last option, and if you're desperate, is Time Waits for No One. As I said, your options are very limited. Even though Castorice can't utilize this effect since it's an abundance light cone, it has high base HP, which can still enable Castorice to do decent personal damage. If this entire section hasn't taught you anything, I'll spell it out for you. Pull for a light cone, it's mandatory. Castorice has a decent amount of options to choose from when it comes to team building. Her premium team includes herself, Sunday, Tribi, and Gallagher. Obviously, you can already guess what the main purpose of this team is, and that is to action advance and buff Castorice since she lacks speed. Obviously, Sunday prioritizes on advancing Castorice and Netherwing. This would ensure that Castorice gets turns to build up new buds. He also provides crit damage with his ultimate and increases damage against enemy units. However, something to remember is that Castorice doesn't actually benefit from Sunday's energy regen. One last thing to note down is that you should only use his ultimate when Netherwing is on the field, since most of Castorice's damage comes from Netherwing. Tribi is also a must in your Castorice team since she provides res pen, increasing the damage you deal against enemies. Castorice also doesn't get her ultimate often due to a hefty requirement, so Tribi would end up lacking on follow-up attacks. And obviously, Gallagher is a no-brainer for this team. Healers are imperative for Castorice to making this team work, and I can't emphasize that enough. Regenerating your team's HP enables Castorice to recharge her ultimate without worrying too much about draining your team's HP. There are also some healers like Lynx and Bailu that increase your team's max HP if you end up taking the route of putting them into your team, but the TLDR of all of this, avoid using shoulders with Castorice. This team needs use a consistent flow of HP to function. Another excellent team option worth using is Castorice, Sunday, Remembrance MC, and Linkshell. This team works similar to the team of Tribi, but the sole purpose of this team is to get more turns. The Remembrance MC would advance forward Castorice and enable her to use more skills to regenerate her ultimate faster, or to use enhanced skills to regenerate Netherwing's HP. They also provide true damage, which simply just enables Castorice to deal more damage. For the free-to-play players at the back, your best team would be Castorice, RMC, Pella, and Gallagher. You mainly want Pella for the ultimate defense shred and her low-cost ultimate, which she can easily access in 3 turns through auto skill. Okay, so this is a bit of a weird one, but you could use Mighty as a second DPS to run alongside Castorice to help build her ultimate faster. But in many cases, Castorice's hyper carry teams can outperform her dual DPS teams. However, you can run this team though, but I'm not going to recommend it. And that's going to be it for the guide video. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll get back to you. What are your thoughts on Castorice? Are you pulling for her? Do you think she's going to break the game? Share your thoughts below. And with that being said, I'll see you in a bit.